So thankful you could join us for this word of encouragement on Tuesday. And today I'd like to go to the Psalm 77. Often in the Old Testament, we are encouraged to remember what God has done. Even in the New Testament, you have, for instance, Stephen going over all that God had done as he was dealing with the Sanhedrin. Remembering the works of God is important both to be a testimony and also for our own encouragement. And that's what we read here in Psalm 77. And it says in verse 11, I will remember the works of the Lord. Surely I will remember thy wonders of old. I will meditate also of all thy work and talk of thy doings. When you find yourself a little down, which is going to happen, and maybe overwhelmed by everything that you're hearing or being involved in, it's good to stop and be thankful. It's good to stop and remember God's wonders in your life. The very fact you're saved is something that ought never get old, that ought to thrill your heart. And then the way God has stepped in and protected you and guided you and brought you to a place where you have a real heart for God. Those are wonderful works of God. And that will encourage you, because the same God that caused you to be able to take right steps in the path and has protected you and supplied for your needs is the same God that will do it in the future. He cares about you. He's right now working on your behalf. He's very much involved in your life. And in this passage, we need to remember, but we need to meditate of all thy work. When you remember what God has done, then you can meditate on His power and His working and get it straight again, that God is in control. You can trust Him. You see, when we get a little discouraged, we have lost our faith in God. Our focus goes on ourselves or other people, and it gets off of the Word of God and off of the Lord. That's why we need to meditate all the time on the goodness of our God. But here's what I want to emphasize, the last little phrase, and talk of thy doings. We need to remember, we need to meditate, but we need to testify. There's something about being an encouragement to someone else of what God is doing, who God is, what He's done in the past, to remind them. As a pastor, I have the privilege all the time of having to talk about all the things that He's done, because I have that privilege and that purpose. And I find that I'm the one that gets most encouraged when I talk about how good God is, or I preach on that, or I talk about what God has been accomplishing. I get encouraged, and so testifying of that is a wonderful way to grow in the Lord. And so I encourage you to not only meditate, but talk to people about what God's showing you. Share how God has worked in your heart through the Word of God. In fact, every day you ought to tell somebody, and then you'll remember it, and it will go deeper within your heart. So today, let's meditate on how good He is, but let's tell somebody about it.